Good morning, all. How's it going? I'm going to just test this stream out, make sure it's running well. See if I can hear myself on. Cool. I can hear myself on Facebook. Let's double check the Twitch output. This is always fun for you guys to see. Alright, so I got a Reese's ad going on. Let's wait for that to end. And we'll double check. Aha. Cool. So you can see the replay of the Reese's ad. And there it is. Perfect. Hi, everybody. Okay. That's done. Let's also double do the Facebook. So I'm on the chat. If you guys have any questions, just feel free to put them in the Facebook chat or the Twitch chat. And then I will respond as soon as I can. So if you guys have any questions, if you guys want to talk about a specific processes, let me know. Okay, so first things first. Yes, Godzilla screensaver desktop, because did you guys see the new trailer? It's pretty dope. Cannot wait for that movie. I'm a big fan of monster movies and just giant things destroying cities, I guess. It's just fun. And honestly, it's the only thing I actually go to the theater to see anymore, is the really big entertainment blockbusters. Because everything else is, I don't know, not really theater going to me. I have a big enough screen at home in a comfy environment. I think that's going to keep happening more and more. People are going to want to just start staying home rather than going to the big screen unless it's a big action movie. Okay, so I guess I want to start with a couple minutes of usual, which is an intro for those of you that haven't seen my stream, don't know who I am. I've been streaming for ZBrush about a month now. This is, or maybe two. This is my 8th stream with ZBrush. So I'm a 3D generalist. I have been a character artist for the past 4 years in Los Angeles, but prior to that I was in Chicago doing advertising and commercials. So you can check out a lot of my work on aiman3d.com. This is kind of my commercial background. And for the past 4 years I've been focusing a lot on 3D printing and physical creation. So in my career arc, I guess you would say that I went from commercial to VFX to trying a lot of different things, and now I'm more in the animation and toy zone, just because I felt that that would be something I could create that would have a more immediate connection with the audience. So what I started doing with 3D printing, I guess I should go backwards. I started writing for 3D World magazine because they commissioned me to do every month an article kind of piece where I did a new 3D print every month, and I would talk about the process of it, making a bobblehead, making a phone case accessory, like an award for the CG awards, and then even prototyping, like a little rubber band gun, and this was done in ZBrush too. Like a full-on collectible statue detailed kind of thing. Jewelry. I wonder if I can, I can use my left and right arrow keys. Wearables as well, working with 3D scans. Making a whole dress. That was the finale, where I spent like a couple of months just working on that article. And putting LEDs all in this. So this is all different 3D printed parts built on top of a scan of the model Jessica so that it would fit perfectly for the shoot. So that was basically the 3D World arc, and even did some, articulated toy stuff. So basically did that for a year, dipping my toe in getting into 3D printing. And then I jumped off the deep end and I opened my own business in which I would help people translate their 2D ideas into 3D maquettes. So I started doing that for a year and just got all sorts of clients, doing a lot of trophies, a lot of pitch materials for people that want to pitch a TV show or a animation to a network. They come to me I can make a trophy for them. And so that's my company, 3D Smiths. And I also, like in that whole making phase, I thought about making a lot of like reference busts and statues to sell. Thought about all sorts of stuff really. But during that whole time of creating my own business, I was also still working, So I got to work at Aaron Sims Creative on doing some 3D printing for concept artwork. Got to work at 3 Black Dot helping to prototype their vinyl toy collection. And I got to work at Super Mansion, Stupid Buddy Studios on this TV show, making 3D printing for stop motion animation puppets. So that was really a fun gig. Learning about slicing, keying, engineering, making all these characters that got printed, painted, and used immediately in the stop motion pipeline. Also did some large scale prints, very large scale ones. This one was at the Alliance Studios. And since then, basically, I've been doing different toy and 3D printing gigs. The most recent one I'm on and enjoying thoroughly is working for Hero Forge. It's a startup in Santa Monica, goes by Sky Castle Studios, and they make this awesome customizer which lets you create minis. So 28mm miniatures. You can choose all sorts of things. Change the leg types, really change everything you can think of changing, like the measurements for the body. Get a different clothing scheme, different outfits, or even really go into it and customize the outfits. Perfect. This is men's armor now. And of course, all sorts of accessories. Ooh, let's do the Vega claws. Yeah. And then changing the pose. So you can basically customize your mini however you want. Even put them on like a mount. And then this gets sent to 3D printing service that sends you the print at your 28mm scale. Or you could get the 3D model, just add it to your card and download it and print it yourself. So this has been a really fun gig because I'm basically making more of these models and helping to rig up more of these characters and do more of these poses. So in addition to that, I do a lot of personal projects where I've got these 3D printers you can see behind me. There's the Race 3D N2 Plus. It's a big FDM printer, 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch print volume. And that's the Form 2. So that's where I do all my... let me turn up some of these lights. Yeah. On the Form 2 is where I do my detailed work. This you see on screen. Let me check you're seeing it. You are. Perfect. Okay. So, this is a little Black Panther mask I made for my Corgi Kuma. I like to dress him up in all sorts of weird stuff. He puts up with it for treats. And lately, my biggest personal project has been since November last year. My wife and I did our own Kickstarter campaign and launched our own toy line, Fungusaurs. So this has kind of been taking up a lot of my free time, is trying to launch a toy line. And this couldn't have happened without 3D printing. I really designed all these characters, 3D printed them out and prototyped them, had a friend paint them up. So I had like the exact way I wanted them to be before I even went into talks with factories. And then now we're getting them mass produced. Yeah, you can tell I've been obsessed with dinosaurs for a while. That's a sculpt I did, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago now. Based on the Dilophosaurus in Jurassic Park. Alright. Let me double check on Twitch. Some of you are having trouble hearing me. Can you hear me now? Alright. So Bobby Brandon, am I a freelancer or work in-house for a company? Right now I'm a freelancer working for Hero Forge, making 3D printed miniatures for these guys and characters and rigging stuff. That's what helps being a generalist. I can do a lot of different things, and I've got a lot of experience now, so I can do all sorts of 3D printing stuff. All right, cool. John Yao is asking, what printers do you use? It really depends on the gig. Oftentimes, I'll send stuff to be 3D printed out to a service that has really incredible and expensive printers. Otherwise, at home for my own company and prints, I use the Raise 3D N2 Plus just because it's a very large FDM printer and I can get a lot out of it very quickly. Or the Formlabs Form 2, which is a resin-based 3D printer, so it can get really fine detail. So I can talk a bit more about the differences in this stuff, but I'm going to wrap up this intro and then get started. If you guys want to learn a lot about 3D printing really quickly, I recommend going to Mold 3D Academy, and you can go to the all classes, self-paced classes right now. Let's see here. Actually, get back to you on this stuff. I have a 3D printing class that we're going to actually add into here, so we're adding a new course entirely. Alright, and the other thing is alright, just double checking the chat. Okay, cool. Let's see. I'm probably just going to get started on this week's stream after a little show and tell. So, making miniatures right now at Hero Forge, Sky Castle Studios, and we had an interesting project come up recently, which I can do a little quick show and tell about, because we wanted to make a video with a painter painting some of these miniatures. And if you want to take a look at this stuff, these minis are pretty tiny. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Alright. So here's a miniature made on Hero Forge. It's going to be really blurry unless I get my face out of the way. Try to find it. There it goes. So this is one that's been painted. A friend of mine painted this, Elvin Rodriguez. Oh, come on, don't be blurry. Come on. I got to figure out how to make this camera like decide where to and where not to be blurry. In any case, so this is a painted miniature, but I want to show this off with a good series of photos and videos of Elvin doing a paint job on the Mini. And seeing as how they're this small, you kind of have to come up with a solution for how to video this kind of painting happening so that it's not in the way of the painter while he's painting. So I did a fun project for my work recently, which is I used the Raise 3D N2 Plus to come up with a new rig that I could use for doing that video to see the painting. So what I ended up doing is printing some stuff. So make the screen a bit larger and get you guys a sense of what's going on. So the first few pieces I printed was kind of like a little bit of a housing. So it's kind of an engineering project. I did this in the combination of Maya and then ZBrush, where I just kind of quickly did the base modeling in Maya just because I'm familiar with it. And I did the scaling accurate to this piece of weight. So this is a piece that comes in an arm weight bunch that you can kind of set the weight you want and then lift as much as you want. But it was perfect for actually making something that could slot in and then weigh the whole thing down. So the front of it kind of will look clean while we're doing the video. The back of it, can kind of slide in this weight. So this is kind of what I do with 3D printing oftentimes is I engineer something as I go along. And that's part of the fun of the project and part of the fun of making 3D printed stuff. So this is the base then. So now on top of this, we've got a regular dowel. This is a 1-inch dowel I just cut into place. And what I want to do is stick the dowel into the center here, all the way to the bottom. Okay, you can see it kind of sticking out the bottom right there. Don't want to stick it out too much. Alright, so now we've got a dowel sticking out of cylinder. You're wondering what's going on with this thing. Well, that's where the next part comes in. So this is an arm, and it's got a mounting secured on the bottom. So this will fit on top of the piece. And then halfway up the arm, it goes from solid to being double-sided with a bunch of holes right through the center. And this is so that I can put a screw right through it and mount basically a camera housing. So this housing is designed to be able to put a mobile phone onto. So, like so, for example, and you can just stick it in. I will stick it in right now, carefully, not too much, because I've got this weird little Pixar knobber on the back. Okay, and then this arm can rotate and come into place. So the idea now, take my phone off, you guys get the idea of that top part. The idea is that this is going to fit onto the arm. I have to actually unscrew the mount a little bit. I like starting these streams off with a little show and tell of like a recent 3D printing project. This is one I'm just wrapping up. Alright, here we go. Slid that down. And if you take a closer look, what's going on is I've actually printed, and this is the good thing about printing custom stuff. I've printed these little arm knobs that can go into the base, so I can key in at exactly the point I want this whole camera angle decided. And once it's in place and it's secured, like if I tighten these knobs, it's not going anywhere. And you can mount and have the phone or whatever camera you attach over here looking at this dowel. This dowel top point is where I put the miniature for painting. So you know what, let's do that right now. I've got a little bit of, need something tacky, sticky. So I've got a little piece of Sculpey right here. I'm just going to put that on top of the dowel. This is really heavy to lift with the weight inside, so I'm just going to take the weight out for a second. Makes it hard to do show and tell. Okay, so there's the thing. And I'm going to just put it on top. Not the thing, I should be more specific. This is a little bit of a Sculpey. And there's all sorts of stuff you can use for this, basically just like a little bit of tack. And then there's the bottom of the print. And I'm going to just tack that on. So it has something to kind of secure itself onto. And the idea would be that while Elvin is painting, he can kind of just put this rig, set it however he wants, with the arm wherever he wants out of his way, and then just paint. And this way he can kind of just do the painting, and then we can do a video of kind of a time lapse or cut next video from the same angle, guaranteed, without having to, you know, set up a tripod and try to measure where the legs will be and all that. So sometimes 3D printing can be as simple as coming up with a custom solution for a simple problem. Like I did this probably in like 20 minutes last week and printed it out and assembled it, and now we're going to use it. So don't think of 3D printing as something that has to happen specifically for a specific reason. 3D printing is being used in toys, stop motion, in large-scale sculpture, in obviously miniatures nowadays, in all sorts of ways. And so engineering and creating your own products and creating your own tools for your whatever purposes is a very valid way of using the technology. Alright, I'm going to put this stuff away. The mini as well. You got to be careful with these guys so they don't get like smashed around. But luckily Hero Forge lets you print them in bronze and steel as well. Alright, I'm going to shrink this screen down a sec. Check out any questions you guys have on the chat. Okay. Alright, people can hear me. Sweet. Alright. Neely is on Twitch is saying, Aiman, did you know that there's no need to Dynamesh anymore to make a watertight mesh? Just Boolean the mesh and it's watertight. I believe that, Neely. ZBrush keeps improving their UI, their workflow, their little bits and pieces you're always having to check out on the ZBrush updates. When they launched the new ZBrush, instead of Dynamesh, they had a really cool way to kind of sculpt from scratch, which is Sculptress Pro. They integrated that into ZBrush, so I really like that. Just as a part of my workflow, I like to Dynamesh to make sure that a mesh is watertight for 3D printing. So I'll probably keep doing that. But if a Boolean does it automatically, that's cool. That's one less step to think about. All right, let's see. Nice rig, sweet, thank you. Alex Chapman is saying Aquaman is back on Facebook. So actually, did you guys? You guys should know what he's talking about. If I go to my ZBrush stream. All right, so if you guys go to pixelogic.com, ZBrushLIVE presenters, you can see all the presenters that are over here. Awesome artists like Joseph Druss and Tony Leonard, Matt Thorup, and down here is me. And you can check out the past broadcasts and schedules, and you can see all the streams that I've done here. So you can see my current schedule, as well as some of my work and the previous streams. So you'll see that I've used this stream as an excuse to keep myself going and sculpting my own projects, and that's the Fungusaur. So I've been making some new ones along with you guys. But then I also did this project where I turned myself into Aquaman. I made like a whole giant cosplay suit thing, which I guess I could show you. It's right back there. But you know what? I could do one better. I can show you some of what the final images are turning out as. Okay. So this is kind of how the images are starting and how they're ending up. Make sure you guys can see them on the Twitch and Facebook. Perfect. All right. So there's kind of the suit that I ended up making. It's made out of 14 different 3D prints, all off the Raise 3D printer, all kind of joined together. And I did an underwater shoot with the photographer Brett Stanley and a friend of mine, Jessica Drew, who was helping to coach, because I've never done any kind of underwater photo shoots. And then this is kind of what we're going for. The idea was kind of a joke pun on, you know, Aquaman's kind of been the redheaded stepchild of superheroes, kind of the weakling. So what if you gave him all the Infinity Stones? Kind of like a DC Marvel crossover thing. And, oh, here it is. What the final images are coming out now look pretty sweet. So there's an example of an image that was taken underwater as I was going by. And then this is kind of the final shot. Almost fully edited. I kind of want the water to go a bit more greenish, so I blend in better with the surroundings. I don't want to stand out so much. But this is the feedback phase for the photographer. And he's done a really sweet job of retouching so far. I can show you some of these images. This one's a bit cheesy for me. I'll get back to you why it's cheesy. I'll show you rather than tell. This one's dope because you get to kind of see the water smash as I smashed the trident down. It created all these bubbles. So, and it's a really cool dynamic pose. This one's fun just because it's got that whole underwater kind of like Triton feel. Action shot, of course. Need to make some faces. You can't take yourself too seriously when you're doing this kind of thing. And let's get back to the one that I thought was kind of cheesy and talk about why it's cheesy. So I gave the photographer a little bit of feedback on this one, which is that I wanted, let's see, somewhere here. Here it is. Okay. So I wanted no ground, for one thing. I want this to feel like it's going straight into the deep, because that gives you more stuff you can do with it. You've got the top of the ocean, you've got the depths, and you've got this dude floating in the center. So it makes it more fun in terms of what possibilities there are. Also, you can see I turned the water a bit greenish, so I blend in better. This water seemed a bit too tropical blue for me. And the other feedback I said was to get rid of about 50% of the God rays. The God rays are these lights streaking through the top of the ocean thing that you see, because it's kind of a bit overdone. I don't know if you guys have seen the new, let's see, Aquaman poster. But it's getting a lot of flack for being very cheesy. Let's see. So there's the new Aquaman poster. Let me see if I can find a larger version of it. I'm really annoyed that Google got rid of their, full-scale large image viewing feature. All right, let's see. There we go. You know what? I'm gonna just download this so we can see them side by side. All right. So this poster has so much going on, and I don't even know where to begin on it. So this is the Aquaman movie that's coming out December. Home is calling is the tagline. You got Jason Momoa in the center as Aquaman, surrounded by hundreds of fish that are very obviously photoshopped in there because this guy is famously from like a Getty Photos kind of shoot. And you can see he's kind of not as blue for some reason, but everything else is. There's a giant, like, very 90s lens flare thing going on behind him, and all the God rays that tell you, hey, look here, look this way. It's a very forced way of directing someone's eye in a composition. And so for me, this poster is just more hilarious than it is successful. But I guess if you're targeting like the 10-year-old market, it works really well. But I didn't want to be that cheesy in my own shoot because this was kind of a fun personal project in basically testing the ability of my printer to create a costume. And so I was pretty psyched and happy with how the costume turned out. And so now it's a matter of making those images turn out good as well and not like that. Although the new Aquaman trailer just came out at San Diego Comic-Con, and that looks pretty sweet. Because that looks kind of a mix of a monster movie and, what do you call it, like a classic superhero film. So I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I can actually do a quick show and follow through. Let's see here. All right, let's click on this.
My father was a lighthouse keeper. My mother was a
Yeesh, quality's crap. All right, I'm just gonna kill the audio, and we can take a look at what's going on. So basically, you see kind of Aquaman's origin story being half merman, half real kid, human, and then he has the ability to talk to fish since he's a kid. Whoa! So that's a good start, and then it cuts into he can break into subs underwater because he's a badass and beat people up. I honestly, half of what's saving this movie is just Jason Momoa's charm. But here we go. So check this out. Look at all these really cool creatures. You've got like sharks with lasers on them, like an alligator, like a mega alligator, like seahorse riders. So it's got so much like monster feature in it. Forward through again. You can see a bit of the city. It's kind of going with the same kind of Black Panther motif of we've got a civilization that was hidden from the rest of the world that's super advanced. And this feels very Valyrian-y to me. Skip forward a bit more. There's, of course, the fight with him and his half-brother for the throne of Atlantis. And a whole bunch of other creatures. I wanted to pause there. Loving these little fish men. And of course, you've got this dude with the giant eye lasers. All right, so here, check out this like last shot with all this crazy action happening with all these like crustaceans and giant alligator and giant sharks. And see, that's the kind of movie I'd go see in theaters, just because. And I'm not getting paid to do this. This is just because I like big monster movies. The other one was the Godzilla trailer, which I'm not going to show here because they don't actually show the monsters really well. They're actually really smart about how they did the trailer. Kind of that's how I feel monster trailers should be done. So check out the Godzilla trailer as well. Okay, So now you have context for why the Aquaman joke was happening. And if you go back to the previous streams, you can kind of see how I went about making that wearable suit of scales and put it all together with the help from everyone I could. I had my sister-in-law visiting, and I had her help me do some stitching as well. Okay, let's head back to the chats. All right. Fahmi is visiting here from Tunisia. Hey Fahmi, thank you for watching my stream. All right. How can you change your keyboard shortcut and mouse movement in ZBrush? Okay, that's a question by Sami Abu Khalil. I will help you answer that very shortly. Have I worked on any CGI or VFX for some of these big Hollywood films? Alex Chapman's asking. Yes, I have worked on VFX and CGI for a bunch of stuff. Films, I can't really show a lot of the cool stuff I get to work on. That's kind of the nature of NDAs and working in LA. But I have worked on Rampage, and I worked on Aquaman for a little bit, the actual new one coming out in the concept phase with Aaron Sims Creative, making the 3D prints that were then used for the movie pitches themselves. All right, on Twitch we have Neela is saying, looking at this cool cosplay costume Aiman made. Thank you. People are saying I should add the sharks to my photos. Not that many. Maybe a couple. All right, cool. Did I use an FDM printer for the costume? I did. So the costume itself was printed with FDM pieces, and it took a while to actually sink underwater because I can show you guys here. I think I had a photo of it. The costume itself was so buoyant that I'm just having trouble even sinking. Jessica here is coaching me on how to hold my breath, but the costume is like not even allowing me to get underwater because all of these scales are hollow. And so I had to just kind of stand there trying to dip myself in the water until the hollows got filled up with the water, and only then could I sink. So funny problems with FDM printing with costumes, but now you know, if you do an underwater shoot, you got to let your prints fill up with water. All right, back to the other question, which was a ZBrush question. So let's start jumping into ZBrush and going into what I'm going to go into today. So these are some of my fungusaurs that I've started sculpting during the streaming with ZBrush with you guys. So some of you have seen me do this character from start to finish. This is the Dilophosaurus one that I started, I don't know, a few weeks back. And this is last week's little Iguanodon giving a thumbs up that is one of my new characters. So all of these are still really early in development. This being a personal project, the Fungusaurus toy line of mine, I kind of take my time and look away from it and then look back and then look away from it and look back. And that's how I'm able to refine it each a bit. Like I refine the sculpts, refine the appeal of the character, and then eventually also think about molding and casting and doing large-scale mass manufacture. You know, what parts will print, what parts can be injection molded, what may I have to change. And this process basically, you know, helps me refine it before I even take it to the factory. Okay. Joanne saying, yep, I inadvertently printed myself a personal flotation device. Exactly, you got it. All right, so we had a ZBrush question, so let me answer that first. Here we go. From Facebook, from Sami Abu Khalil said, how can I change my keyboard shortcuts and mouse movements in ZBrush? Okay, so I highly recommend customizing ZBrush to your needs. You can see mine has a custom UI that I created that I use for a lot of my 3D printing and sculpting in general. All of the stuff down at the bottom you can see are the brushes that I use the most. My material library, I've got all these materials that I use a lot, with the Sculpey material and the Skin Shade being my most often used. Sculpey just for the ability to sculpt on it, and then Skin Shade for when I do any kind of coloring. Ralph Sculpts, RS stands for Ralph Stumpf Sculpey, and it's a really fun material to actually sculpt on. You get to see, I don't know, I personally prefer it better than red wax in any case. And that one is available on the ZBrush Matcap store. So you can just go to the Matcap store and download it. The shortcuts, so I've got a bunch of different shortcuts set. Let's go to this model only. You can tell the sculpt is still pretty lumpy and rough, but it's perfect to actually start refining and improving. The topology is also all over the place because I was sculpting this with Sculptress Pro on. There it is. Sculptress Pro on, and that basically every time you smooth with a different size brush can kind of, as you work, change the topology on the fly, which is really dope. Really sweet feature, ZBrush. Alright, and I've got a bunch of shortcut keys set up. So when I press C, it goes into clay brush. When I press Control C, it'll go into clay tubes. Slight difference, but clay tubes generally has this alpha on by default, which lets you kind of make, as opposed to just regular clay smooth, clay tubes help you kind of really figure out the look a lot quicker. And then I've also got V set up for my move, because I use the move brush a lot. I've got N set up for standard brush, so that's just for anything to do with standard. I usually use standard a lot for painting, because you can put all sorts of masks and alphas into here. Let's see. Let's go with that color. And turn on mRGB, turn off Z-Add. Even maybe like turn it to color spray. And this is kind of how I'd start laying out like a base color for this character. It's just using the standard brush. So what else am I using? Z doesn't do anything. X activates symmetry. Z, I believe, is kind of a quick undo one, so I didn't want to mess with that. D duplicates, D is used for dynamic subdiv or up and down in resolution, so I didn't mess with that. But basically you can set whatever hotkeys you want on the keyboard by going to Preferences, Hotkeys, and changing them up. So you can save the hotkeys file here, and the way to actually, whoa, I have to remind myself. Here we go. So I just Googled it really quickly. You can press Control Alt and click on any interface item you want to assign a hotkey to, and then just click that key, and it'll automatically save it. So say that I wanted to use, let's see, groom. If I were to do a lot of, actually let's do H polish for H. Nope, that's already been set up. What do I have that has not been set up? K has not been set up, so let's do something with K. What do I use a lot that I want to assign to something? Pinch. Obviously nothing labeled that starts with K. K is an underutilized letter. Okay, I'm just going to pick something. So let's go with groom hair toss. That's one I use relatively often for when I do grooming. So say I wanted to use that one on my keyboard shortcut K. I can go to my brush palette, click Control Alt, and then click on that, groom hair toss, and then click K. And so that becomes assigned to K. So you can see when I press V, it'll go to my move tool, N will go to my standard tool, and K will now go to groom hair toss. So that's a new hotkey that I just set up. And in order to complete the setup process, you have to go to Preferences, Hotkeys, and Save. And what this is going to do is overwrite the previous hotkeys file you've got, like a notepad text file that's saved in the ZBrush preferences, and it'll overwrite it. So that's basically it for hotkeys. For custom configuration stuff, you have to actually drag and drop the elements around to where you want them to be by going into Enable Customize. And you can see, you can just hold Control over it and it'll tell you. Control Alt dragging will allow you to place items wherever you want. And then when you're done, just click Save UI and Store Config. And that way you can build your own custom UI. Alright, so hopefully that answers that question. Sigma's asking, do you know any good way to make fur out of fiber mesh? So that's a good question, Sigma. There is a lot of ways to make fur in ZBrush. The most obvious one, say if I wanted to give this dude a little haircut. That's fun. That's what I like about streaming, is anything can happen with the questions you guys ask me. So it's not necessarily like, all right, this is what we're doing today. I did not expect to be talking about fiber mesh, but happy to oblige. So you basically have to select a mask for where you want the hair to be. So in this case, I think the mask needs to be on the section where you do want it to be. You can scroll down in your tool palette, so that's there for you guys. I've kind of docked it over here to fiber mesh, and you can see what fiber mesh options there are to start with. You don't need to start from scratch. So say I like that one, I can just double click on it, hide this, and there I've got a start for what I want the fiber mesh to look like. And what I can do now is go to the modifiers down here and adjust it. So I can basically change the length, let's say, increase the max fibers, decrease the length. Looks like I'm selecting something down here too, which is weird. Let's go with a different one. Let's go with something grassy. There we go. I unselected that area too. So you can pick really whatever you want as your starting point, but then you really have to get into adjusting it. So you can adjust the max fibers, that'll increase the count, reduce the length, and figure out what, length you want really. With the high length, you can do a lot of fun stuff like increase gravity or get rid of gravity. You get like fun haircut styles. Change the colors however you want to. And then also, you can change the thickness of this stuff. Down here, there's profile and segments that controls how often this piece would bend, how many segments there are. Okay, skip all these notes. And revolve controls the, I believe, the curliness. There's revolve and something else which controls curliness. Let's try revolving a lot. See what happens. Yeah, basically just adds more curls and twist too. So this is a good way you can really use fiber mesh to come up with whatever hairstyle you want and then get into it with the groom brushes. So with this selected, I can just click accept. By the way, this is not 3D printable whatsoever. If you do want to create 3D printable hair using fiber mesh, you have to add a lot more profile and you have to inflate it a lot. I can show you guys how to do that as well. Let's see here. It's not profile. There's something else that I can use to make it thicker. Length profile, width profile. You can adjust that. Let's see. Coverage, scale root, scale tip. Alright. I'm just going to accept this for now and see. Once you click accept, it basically turns it into an actual hair mesh that you can start sculpting and moving around. So with my groom hair toss brush selected, I can come in and you can see if I hold shift, I can smooth the length of the hair a bit. And with groom hair toss, I can move it around. So right now it's snapping a lot. You can see every time I click on it, it's kind of snappy. And the reason for that is it's kind of snapping right to the center of the head. There's an option you have to change in order to be able to sculpt the hair in piece, which I believe, let's see, it's under brush or something like that, fiber mesh, the collision tolerance. So you have to adjust the front and back collision tolerance in order to be able to sculpt with a lot of these brushes. Let's see, let's change this to, let's make the hair a lot stiffer. Forward propagation, reduce that, front collision tolerance. Let's increase that a lot and see what happens. It's still messing with me a lot. Maybe my Z intensity is just set super high. Well, I'm not going to start talking too much about grooming because clearly I haven't done it in a little bit. Oftentimes these kinds of things are really good as a start. And if you get really into it, ZBrush has got some really sweet tools for grooming. But depending on your output, for example, like if I'm doing a 3D print, oftentimes this stuff won't print. And if I am doing a render in Maya or Modo or something else, these curves might not be the right solution for me for print. So you may actually have to export your curves, in your fiber mesh, actually reduce the count and use those as guide curves to start the actual curves for animation. But what I can do now that it's an actual mesh is duplicate it just so I have a backup. And I can go to my deformation and see if I can inflate this. And now it starts becoming more and more print friendly because it's now getting thicker. So when I'm thinking about 3D printing, really, which is for most of my projects, you kind of hide and delete all the junk I don't want. That's better. Okay. Go to delete hidden and inflate a bit more. Make that really nice and thick. All right, cool. And then I can dynamesh this. So obviously we need to figure out the resolution that we want. And this might take a while because there's a lot of intersecting faces. All right, cool, back at that. All right, so 128 resolution already. It's kind of janky, but it did the trick as far as creating a mesh that's now a lot more printer friendly. And so that's kind of one way you can use fiber mesh for 3D printing. Not sure if that was part of your intended question. I'm kind of just sculpting it on with Sculptris Pro now. I'm just kind of making it inflate slowly, trying to figure out the shape that I want. Could do this with the groom brushes as well earlier in the phase, but now that I already started it like this, I'm going to keep it going. Kind of give him a very Bob Rossi haircut. Need to change it from being red to then being a bit more brown or blackish brown. And I can fill object. There we go. We got the little Bob Ross dino. Need to give him some a brush in his hand and then like say pretty little trees. All right, so hopefully that answered your question. Kind of a segue, but definitely wanted to address any questions you guys have. Let's see here. Should I do that? Okay. All right, cool. So that answered the chat questions. If you guys have any more, feel free to drop them in the chat. What I wanted to do today, kind of now that I'm done with the show and tell portion of my stream, is to kind of work on either making more of these Fungusaur characters or refining the existing ones. So let's take a look at the existing ones so far. You kind of just figure out and take a look at the whole series. So this one, I've got the little tongue sticking out, and I've already kind of remeshed him and projected and kind of done the coloring, which I then printed out and used to do a Shapeways 3D print in color. So I can show you guys that. Bring it right here. Okay. Never mind. It's not around. Moving right on. I'm going to drop this in edit mode. And here's the Dilophosaurus character. This is bred with a pig's ears mushroom, which is a really fun mushroom, and it can have that kind of frill. That's what it's known for. Now, so I'll put all three of these guys down here. Make sure my face in the window isn't blocking everything. So I'll make that a bit smaller. Drop edit again, and let's go back to our Bob Ross dino right now. So this is an iguanodon character. I haven't really figured out which mushroom I want to blend it with. Oftentimes I think about just the pose, the appeal of a character before I even get out to what which mushroom I'm doing combining with, because that's often a story decision, and I'm working on the story right now as well. So these are the three that I've started in the ZBrush streams. Let's take a look at some of the previous ones. I can go to my models and load that up. Okay, I've got that in. It's an art, 3D assets, 1 through 8. All right, so this is the latest file. Let's open that up. All right, this file is open, so let's draw that down. Okay, so these are the original 8 characters that I made. Turn on perspective mode so you can see them a bit better. All right, let's leave that up. All right, this is another question. Let's see. Last week you showed the factory in China painting the toys. Do you have to plane the colors, or do they change? Do they charge more for more colors? They definitely charge more for more colors, so you have to kind of refine your color palette and think about which specific colors you want per character and how they're going to be used. So that's a question by Hyperion Armory in reference to last week's stream, where I was showing a bit of the mass production process on these guys. So to catch you guys up that didn't see last week, I can show a little bit of what he's talking about or what he's referring to. Let me see here. I got the photos a lot more organized since I did the demo last week. Just gotta find them. Here we go. Okay, so last week, so this is maybe about 2 weeks ago now, I was in China, and then I went to visit the factory to do a little quality control on my mass production. So it was a bit of an epic journey to get there. It was like 30 hours of flying and then taxiing around Hong Kong, and then from there we went to Shenzhen, crossed into mainland China, took a high-speed rail to Shantou, where the factory is, where I'm making the toys, and then let's see. Which image next? That is, there we go. So this is the factory where I'm making my fungusaurs. You can tell they have quite a serious dinosaur obsession as well. The CEO here doesn't speak any English, but for over an hour we were just nerding out on dino stuff, where he's showing me his collection of stuff in reference to Archaeopteryx. It's one of the original fossils found in China that shows the transition of dinosaurs into birds. And then all his books on dinos, and obviously dinos are a big part of what they do there. So I'm really happy with the factory I chose, just based on a lot of research and a lot of networking and asking a lot of people, and eventually settling on this one, or landing on this one. What should I show next? Okay, so all of the factory production stuff after you've done your prototyping begins with these tools. So once I had my characters prototyped, and this one is the Paradots character, which you can see if I go back to ZBrush, right there, all the way on the left. What is happening? Yeah, there it goes. Okay, frame that. So that's this character right here, the red one, in tool form. And so a tool is kind of like a giant 400 or 500 pound steel kind of mold that encases it on both ends. And plastic is kind of PVC plastic in this case, isn't somewhat flexible. It's injected while it's still molten into the two sides as it squishes down on them, and then it pops open to drop it off. So that's the process of mass manufacturing toys. And it takes a while to get from your prototype and 3D print stage to the tool. There's a lot of back and forth and trying to figure out the exact way the model is going to be so that it works. And in some cases, like this character, it can all be done in one mold, in one piece. Other characters, I had to slice at the head and key back together. Okay, then the next thing was once the tools are actually spit out of here, you need to kind of do a quality check and material testing. You can see they're still attached to sprues when they come out. And all of these models, you need to check the material. You need to make sure it's kid-friendly, safe, and the plastic is solid and there's no defects in the models, and nothing is too pointy or like can hurt anyone. All these things you need to basically do a material testing check. And once those are approved, they move on to painting. So, got that here as well. So that's kind of a two-part phase. So the paint master here decides what the colors are going to be. So this is in reference to your color question. So just by look, he can know which colors to mix and the ratio exactly because of his experience doing this. And then all the factory guys, this is the spray painting room, very well ventilated, lots of big windows. They spray on specific parts of the model with a specific color. And what you can see over here is they've even got some custom molds that they can use to spray in the negative space. So they're only, like, say, doing one eye at a time, one color at a time. And then from the spray painting phase, it goes on to the hand painting phase, which is they let me do it a little bit as well. But they basically come in by hand and print one color at a time, or paint one color at a time on any area that needs to be, one color at a time. So that's the painting phase. And then, I've got that here. Then the toys go to packaging. So once they're actually finished being painted and they've dried, they just put them in individual Ziploc baggies, and then they put them in individual boxes, which then 12 of those get put into the whole mystery box, the 12-piece display box for stores. And then that will be then put into another giant box, which is kind of a shipping crate container. And then it'll be shipped to Long Beach here in LA, where I'll pick it up and then put in storage. So right now we're in the middle of production. It's nowhere near done. So I'm hoping to have the toys out by November-ish is the goal right now. So yeah, that's the reference for you guys for that question. Going back to ZBrush here. So yeah, the more colors you want, the more expensive it gets. So you have to kind of pick a color palette and think about what really is realistic for a factory to do. For example, there's a lot of detail going on in this chick wrap character with all the little kind of tiger stripe things going on over him, and that is kind of hard for a factory to do. So you have to kind of narrow it down to what is possible for, I'm making 16,000 toys right now this first time around, but even that is a small order for a factory. So you have to kind of work back and forth with them for a while until you can figure out what colors they can do and how much it would cost. All right. How do you adjust their scale in ZBrush? Side Effects is asking. So that's a good question. I can answer that right now. Let's actually go ahead and make sure these new characters that I've been sculpting are at the same scale as the old toys. So easiest way to do that, we should actually go ahead and make a box to make sure. All right, so it's going to be really hard for you guys to see because I made the screen really tiny. Make it a bit bigger again. So this is a box that we'll be using to kind of show off the 8 different characters and kind of encourage kids to want to collect them all. And on the other side, you can see is the augmented reality app that I'm making for Fungosaurus as well to kind of help bring these toys to life, which is kind of my angle that I'm going for. It's kind of like a dino pet thing, but also mushrooms. So you can do foraging, you can do scavenger hunts, a lot of fun things. And since I've got the box and I've got the actual scale of it, I can measure that, and we can make sure that we create the toys that fit inside that box. So I haven't done this part yet for the new characters. So what I can do is, while I've got these 8 selected, I can make sure that I'm sculpting at the correct scale. I'll click on append and append on my stego, for example. And you can see for him, he was already at a pretty good scale to start. Kind of goes right in line with all these other guys. But I think he could be a little bit bigger here. Scale that up a bit. So right now, there's a few different ways to scale. This is using the gizmo tool in ZBrush. All I had to do was go off of draw, just click off of it, or click off of edit, one of them, no, off of draw onto scale. And that brought up the gizmo tool. And if I don't want the gizmo tool, I can turn that off, and I can just use the transpose tool. Make sure I'm not doing it with X on, so I'm not doing it symmetrically, and then just drag and drop from here. And this will scale from that point as a pivot point, and this is the point as my scale puller. So that's a couple of different ways to scale. There's also, in deformation, you can go to size and you can adjust the size there. You can see this one is doing it from a different pivot, which is kind of the scene center axis. So there's a lot of different ways to scale in ZBrush, but that's 3 of them right there. Hope that answers your question, side effects. Okay, check in Facebook too. We got Didier Comte saying bonjour. Bonjour. We got some people over from France. Congrats on your World Cup win. Unless you're not from France and you're from Belgium, then sorry. Let's see. Pierre the Artist is saying, could you provide the link and contact of your manufacturer for the ZBrush toys you sculpt? So, as far as sharing factories and sharing, which manufacturer I used and how I contacted them and all that information, I'd be much more happy and inclined to share that information once I'm done with my order, once I actually have the toys in hand, once I know that they did a good job throughout the process. Right now, I'm still in the middle of the process. So it's very hard for me to give them my thumbs up and say, yeah, this factory is the best, go with these guys, contact these people. So up until that point, I don't really want to, go around sharing that information, obviously. If you do want to look into more of the process, and I did actually share the name on the Fungosaurus Kickstarter page. So if you want to go to my Kickstarter, search that up, look at the blog post, you can figure that out. All right. Paid Artist is saying, I'm from Singapore. Hey, man. I was just in your neck of the woods a couple weeks ago. Okay. So I got another question. What I thought was, if you just transfer to 3D printer, they won't be humongous or tiny. So not really sure what you mean by that, but you need to figure out scale in your software first before you print it. That's where you can tell the printer what scale you want it. When you export out of ZBrush, you can actually go to the 3D Print Hub in Z plugin, and you can set the scale that you want to export at in inches or millimeters, and then you've got an exported STL file or an OBJ that will be the right scale for print. So that's how you would figure out the scale. Let's actually go ahead and make a box. The stego is pretty solid scale-wise. Let's check the scale on a couple of the other characters. There's the Dilophosaurus character. Go back to draw mode. Everything seems to be coming in right there. Move that down. So the Dilophosaurus character is a bit tiny. And then let's also append the New Iguanodon character. Just the fibers, just the Bob Ross haircut came in. Alright, let's go back to that one. Make sure I've got the character selected. And then, back of this, append that guy. Alright, so he's more of the correct scale as well. So generally I try to work within the same scale. That's why all of these characters kind of line up. It's probably the best scale for working in ZBrush because ZBrush kind of has an arbitrary scale in a sense. You have to know what ZBrush's units are for how they scale. And everything is basically around like a primitive scale. So if you click on any of these primitives and sculpt in that scale, then you're sculpting at ZBrush's default and everything just works a lot better. And then once you've done your sculpt, then you can scale it up or down depending on what your output is, or if you need to add more detail and more Dynamesh resolution. Okay. And Dude2 is saying that Shane Olson had a ruler model to know what size the model will be. Free to download on his site. So yeah, Shane Olson's got a ton of really cool, great stuff. So his stream, I believe, is today, maybe like an hour after mine. So definitely stick around to check that out. There's also if you Google Calipers Master, type in ZBrush as well. So ZBrush Calipers Master is kind of a real-time scaling and measuring tool in ZBrush. So it's unofficial plugin on Gumroad, but definitely worth a look if you are interested in figuring out scale for all sorts of things. I think in the example here he's using rings, but it's basically for ZBrush as a plugin for you to figure out what scale things are. All right, hope that answers that. Okay, so what I wanted to do is make a box and use that measurement to kind of make sure that all my characters fit into it. Still early for that because it's not really the right, I'm not really at the box phase yet. It's still kind of a design phase, but I think it'll be useful and it'll be relatively quick. So I'm going to do this in Maya and then import that into ZBrush just because I like doing that workflow and it's pretty good for me. So this is about 2.5 inches by 3.75. So if I do it in millimeters, that might be a bit better. 6.5 centimeters by 9.5 centimeters. Perfect. So I'll open up Maya, I'll make the box, I'll import that into ZBrush and save that into my file. That way I'll have that for reference anytime I want to bring that in. Then I can kind of refine the scale for all these guys. Okay. All right, we got Maya open. I'm going to make sure that this is set into millimeters first. It's taking its sweet time because Maya always takes its sweet time. Settings, preferences, going to go into preferences. Make sure that this is, oh, no. Okay. Make sure that my scale here is set properly. So this is set to centimeters. I'm going to switch that to millimeters because Maya just works better when it's in millimeters. Save that. All right. And I'm going to create a box. So this is simple enough. I can just go to create cube. And I just did the measurements. Double check my measurements. This is about 9.5 centimeters tall, so that'll be 95 millimeters. The width and height is going to be, width and depth is going to be 6.5 centimeters, so that'll be 65 millimeters. And click create. All right, so there's my box. So this is done in millimeters. However, Maya's got a really weird export bug when it comes to OBJs in particular, which requires you to scale up everything times 10, and then it'll export at the right scale for OBJ. So I'm going to go into my desktop. Let's see, go into ZBrush streaming, stream 8. All right, let's call this Fungosaur's box scale. Export that as OBJ. All right, then back in ZBrush, I can just use my import button. Go down to my stream 8, open that up, and there's the box. You may be asking yourself, what's in the box, man? What's in the box? Okay. That was a reference to the movie 7. Alright, so with all these characters here, whoa, this heavy file, got 21 million polys in this. That's why it's taking a while to move around. But let's see what happens when I append the box into here. So yeah, you can tell that this file that I'm working in, that's not an accurate scale file for the measurement of the final print. This is the actual measurement of what a final print should be. So these characters are not even built in that measurement. They're built in ZBrush's scale. I then export them out and then scale them to the proper height for print. So long story short, I guess you could either sculpt in ZBrush at box scale, or you can sculpt in ZBrush at the scale that's best for the actual sculpting in ZBrush, the workflow. And that's kind of what I did, clearly, because I want to sculpt. I don't want to think about anything besides sculpting. I want to focus my energy on just the appeal and the character itself, and then figure out scale. So this is good to have, but I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to move on to my characters again and figure out what I want to do next. So this character definitely could use a lot of refinement. We can draw on the stego as well. This character is pretty much solid. I've even done a little prototype test of it. And then there's the Dilophosaurus character. Put a Sculpion. Okay, so he's actually a little bit further along in the refinement process. So it kind of goes like level 1, level 2, level 3. And what I want to do now is either push this one up to level 2, push this one up to level 3, or make a new one. So really, you know, world's our oyster with a personal project. I can think about what I want to do. Make sure you guys don't have any questions. All right, cool. No questions there, no questions there. Sweet. Okay, so let's see. We've got about 50 minutes left in the stream. I kind of am done with the show and tell portion, or the talking about stuff portion of my stream, which I usually do. Like the first 45 minutes or so, or an hour, I kind of just show stuff, answer questions, talk about whatever, and then I get into sculpting. So what I feel like right now is getting into sculpting. Get my workspace right. And let's see. Let's figure out what I want to do. Pulling up some reference on my second monitor here. This is the pig's ears mushroom. This is the one that I'm using for my Dilophosaurus character here. So I could actually go in and start making this look a bit more mushroomy. That's one option. Or I could design some more, or I could just keep refining this guy and figure out what mushroom to use for Iguanodon. Let's take a look at that first. Looking up an Iguanodon. This is one of my favorite dinosaurs because if you take a look at any of the images, it's got this spike for a thumb, so it always looks like it's giving a thumbs up. So it always cracks me up. One of the duck-billed dinosaurs. This one looks like he's doing a hang loose sign. So one of the later models actually looks like it was the main dinosaur used for the Disney dinosaur movie, the Iguanodon. I like that movie a lot. Stop this. All right. So what I want to do is, I guess, figure out what mushroom to combine the iguanodon with and start making the actual, combination. Start refining that model. I think that'll probably be the best use of my time here for 45 minutes or so, is to work on this guy. So let's go back to the iguanodon model, clear everything else, frame it. And what I'm showing you here on screen right now, not on screen, on my webcam. Close out of Maya, don't need that anymore. Don't want it to be burning memory cells in the background. Okay, so this is kind of how I came up with the idea for Fungosaurus originally. I got really into looking at different mushrooms and identifying them when I went to Yosemite National Park and just trying to see in the rainy season which ones I could find and name. And then on the way back, I stopped in In-N-Out Burger and they gave me all these dinosaur stickers. So I just started sketching the two and combining them. I've been into dinosaurs since Jurassic Park originally aired, which I'm sure many of you have as well. But this is a mushroom hunting catalog I've got here. So I've got all these different species to pick from and choose, as well as obviously hundreds of others online. And I may not even decide yet which one to go with. It does help in a design sense. You can use more elements from an existing mushroom and get that into your sculpt. But sometimes it's really just about refining the appeal of the character, and this character still needs a lot of refinement. Alright, I've used a lot of these already. Inky cap, honey mushroom, that's interesting. A honey mushroom. Yellow brown, found in grassy areas and woodlands. The spore print is white. And from what I remember about the honey mushroom, it's an invasive species that kind of grows everywhere and takes over everything. I think the largest recorded honey mushroom was like hundreds and hundreds of feet, like as wide as a football field. It's got the whole network growing underground. Looks like these often grow together, so it's not really one. It's kind of a pack of them, like a herd, which could work and is a story element. Looks like they start out as pretty round, flat bulbs, and then they eventually spread out and kind of take up every bit of space. Here we go. That's actually a really awesome image to show the growth of this creature. Alright, so starting out as a small bulb, eventually kind of flattening out and spreading out. Pretty standard mushroom there, though. You could try to pick something that's a bit more colorful. Let's see here. The orange milky, the haymaker mushroom, Citron amanita. Alright, I could keep looking these up forever. Honestly, there's just so many different types of fungi. This one's interesting. Let's look this one up and see if we like that. It's called the two-colored bolete mushroom. Alright, so this is from a different family of mushrooms entirely. Much more round and much more, a much thicker stem, very smooth on the outside. The bottom gills are almost foam-like. But I do like the colors that are going on here. So sometimes I can make a decision based on purely aesthetics, not story as much. Doesn't look like it's poisonous, found in deciduous forest. Olive brown spore print, no gills. We already saw it's got the foam at the bottom. But it's purple, red, and yellow. That's pretty neat. But this one is such a clear, distinctive shape. It's got like that half dome and like a really thick stalk. So I don't know if this is the right one for this creature. You know what? I'm gonna delay picking which mushroom I'm going to go with for this, and instead focus on the appeal of the character first, and then come back to that. So you can see it's always kind of like a fascinating, you know, not just fascinating reference gathering session. You have to really pick why you would pick a specific mushroom for a specific character or specific reference in general. You know, that's kind of why I do the streaming, is to kind of show you guys my process and do my process. It always like has its own natural flow to it. Mushrooms are true aliens. Yeah, they totally are. I mean, technically, they're our ancestors. They're local life forms that have existed, the fungi kingdom, on planet Earth for a lot longer than we have. They just evolved in a very different route. Oh yeah, cordyceps, the zombie fungus. That's a good one. The zombie fungus is intense. I've been trying to figure out which dinosaur to merge that one with. But the cordyceps mushroom here, it basically takes over an ant's brain, tells it to go really, really high up, the highest up it can on like, you know, a plant and tree, and then it sprouts out from the back of the ant's head and brain. So it's a pretty killer mushroom, literally. Yeah. This is not even close to the grossest stuff that I've searched for in my Google search history. Yeah, I'll come back to that one. Like, it's the hard thing about finding, like, you know, creating like a kids show or kids series or kid friendly series, and trying to also make something that would be much more, I don't know, appealing for everyone. All right, so with this character now, what I've got going on, this is the sculpt since last week. I noticed a few things I already want to change. So the eyes are just kind of placeholders. The tongue, I had it sticking out because I started from the Stego character, which had its tongue sticking out. But now that I can see both of them right next to each other, it's too much tongue sticking out. I don't know if I want a whole series of characters with their tongue sticking out, even though I did mirror it over to the other end. What I could try is actually have the tongue stick out on this end, and not worry about it then in terms of mass production either. Because if the tongue is sticking out, but it's flat up against the mesh, then it's easier for the injection molding guys to not have an extra thing. So I can cut that, go to my delete hidden, dynamesh it again, make sure my dynamesh is on, and just start smoothing that out again. Turn Sculptress Pro back on, so I can kind of just smooth away any detail I don't want. And I'm going to keep working on the form and the shape of this character before I decide on which mushroom and how I want this character to be, like the actual character of it. This is fun actually, to stick the tongue out like this for a few different reasons. One, it makes it much more production friendly. And two, it's just cute. It's kind of like an actual artist that's, you know, trying to gauge something almost. This Bob Ross rig is having an effect on my design here. You know what? I should shrink this screen down because that's massive. Yep. Thank you for telling me the camera is huge. Okay. Now you see what I see. I basically got rid of the tongue on this end, smoothed it out, and put it up over here. Let's continue smoothing this out and refining this character. Alright, cool. Don't want to give him a Joker kind of smile. Still a little tiny one. Kind of a nervous smile, like, hey, don't eat me. Okay. With Sculptris Pro on, I really don't need to worry so much about the topology, and that's really nice. You can kind of just sculpt away. Refining the hands a little bit. You can see when I sculpt, I tend to jump around a lot between different sections, and that's a good way to keep your mind focused on the level of detail altogether rather than, say, getting caught up in the face or the head or just one area. Because then your model gets only detailed in that area. This also lets me just take a step back and look at the silhouettes, see what's happening. I want all these characters to be kind of like baby-like at first, so I want to round them out quite a bit. There's the knees in front. Some pudgy-like stuff going on in the back. Smooth that out. Maybe use my inflate brush a bit. That's just pressing I on my keyboard because I set up a keyboard shortcut for that. To refine what's going on this toe. That looks weird. Okay, good, good. All right, thinking about 3D printing also, you've got to think about balance and having a character that's going to be able to stand up on its own when you print it and prototype it. I'm going to refine some of what's going on in the bottom. And thinking about balance and how this character is going to stand, I have to think about where the weight is distributed. So a lot of this character's actual limbs are right back here. So this is the plane that's going to be on the floor, right here. However, his weight is kind of, center mass is here, but this head is also a big, heavy weight, which means with just this stuff here, it's likely going to tip over and fall down. So that's not ideal. So a few different things I can do to make that a bit better is I could actually move the feet forward. Just do that really quickly. And if I do that, that actually provides a really good triangular, hey, don't fall. So I could do that. I could change the pose and move the head back a bit. So let's see what that would look like really quickly. And just select the head. Turn off this haircut for now. And just use the gizmo to move that back. Actually, why not? Interesting way to think about it. Let's see. Let me move. Let me get even more of this neck area. Soften that up a bit by just control tapping. All right, now let's move again. Let's even rotate, see if we like that better. I've noticed with these characters, since they're really small, basically 3-inch prints and prototypes and toys, having them kind of look up a little bit is better than having them look down. Because when they're looking down, their eye level is way below your ground level, you know? Having them look up lets you interact with the character a bit better. All right, that's looking pretty interesting. And just by simply moving his head back a bit, now I'm much more sure that this will print, and this will be much more likely to stay grounded and not fall on its head all the time. Let's change up the shape and proportions a bit as well. See if I want to turn this head into an actual big mushroom thing. I'm going to grab that. Start playing around with the design, playing around with the silhouette. ZBrushLIVE is saying, looking and realizing that you have a problem with proportions is very difficult for me. More so it's of a cartoon character. No, you're right, man. It's difficult. It's not a straightforward process, especially when you're concepting and coming up with something of your own. When you've got a concept illustration in front of you, it's easier to know, okay, this is how it should be, so I should do it this way. But when you're trying to create something from scratch, you've got to use kind of everything you know. And honestly, the best process is just doing. Do it over and over until you figure out the look that you're going for. This is kind of cool. It gives him kind of like a cobra kind of head motif, which is very interesting. I don't know. It makes him a bit more threatening than I want him to be, this character. I may actually want this character to be kind of classical mushroom looking, which is the whole rounded top hat kind of thing. It's actually pretty funny. It works better when I do that. This is just play, it's playing with design, playing with the look. The way I always do it is I kind of squint my eyes and I just look with like a big blur and see, hey, is this giving me what I want or not? I do want the mushroominess, the fungal nature of these creatures to be much more apparent, just really obvious from the silhouette. Kind of give him a Smurf cap and see how that looks. It's kind of finding its shape automatically, It's kind of working better and better the more I play with it. Sculptris Pro, obviously just refining the topology as I go along. I have to remember to do the Cobra thing on one of the characters later. Just kind of use the mushroom to make it look like another kind of scary creature. So that'll have to be for one of the scary ones later on. Make a note to that end later for myself. I use Evernote a lot for my notes. Let's see here. I'm sure there's a better note-taking app. Just need to figure out my own way. Let's see. All right, I need Cobra mushroom back end. Cobra profile. So a simple note like that, saying Cobra profile, mushroom back end, might help me remember. All right, cool. So that's looking all right. And Jonathan Shaflok saying ZBrush 2018, yeah. All right. LexLive is saying that's why you try to stick to reference. All sculptors stick to it, even though they understand proportions. Yeah, I mean, there's no time I'm not working without reference. Honestly, like I've got this open on my other screen. I'll go into images as I go. Just looking at what other people have done, looking at what motifs have already been made CG and not CG. Looking at anatomy, looking at reference for what the actual bone structure for a character looks like. I'm always looking at reference on my second monitor, so don't get the idea that whatever I see, whatever you see on my ZBrush is coming out of my head. There is always a solid reference foundation for it all. That said, when you're coming up with a concept, you do need to kind of come up with it. So it's a matter of hitting yourself against the wall. Since we're talking about anatomy, and we were just talking about reference and looking at stuff, the arms here don't look like proportionally they're in the right place. I think they should be much higher over here somewhere. So let's see. I'll continue refining this shape and moving things around. You can even do large movements like really big and see, hey, does that look cool? It's got a fireman's hat thing going on. Maybe. Not a right fit for this one. But doing these kind of silhouette changes really quickly, that's kind of cool. It gives them kind of a baseball cap feel. I'll write that down too. Like a mushroom baseball cap. Just doing these little experiments and doing it really quickly without being committed to any one thing in any specific order, it lets you be more creative. Another thing I was thinking I could try is to just clip it and make it a really sharp edge. So that could be interesting. So let's try that. Bring that down, clip this. So this is what it's looking more like a bolete mushroom now, like a two-colored bolete. It's actually not bad. It's got an interesting feel to it with that really sharp edge, and it feels a lot more mushroomy. It's like really obviously, you know? In any case, I'll leave it there for now and come back to it. If I do end up using the two-color bolete for this character, it's the perfect shape for it. Just rounding things out. Yeah, pretty happy with that for right now. And we already saw that the bolete doesn't have gills. It's just kind of got a foamy bottom. Let's see, bring that back up. Yeah, here we go. So you can see the bottom of this is very just foamy. And it's got random dents, so I'd want to add a few of those. But mostly just foamy. There's no gills under this one. That doesn't look like a mushroom, a bolete, because it's got those gills. So the other feature about this mushroom is the very thick kind of stem of the straw, stem of the mushroom. So if I do end up going with this one, I'll need to, it actually kind of could work because it's going from like, you know, thinner to thick. Could push that and see. If I make its shoulders too broad, it looks like a very strong character. And so just thinking about it in character design terms, I want it to be, you know, not that strong looking. I'm going to select the arms here, maybe even up higher. Soften that selection. Unselect some areas. I'm just going to try to move the arms around. Make sure I'm selecting everything I need. Perfect. All right. So now that I've got that, I can just move. I can move the whole arm around. That's looking a lot more correct, speaking from an anatomical perspective of where the joints would be if this was a humanoid kind of standing character. Even if not, even if it is more of a original, similar to the creature, like this looks like it can walk on its forearms, kind of like a gorilla can a little bit. Yeah, kind of like using its hooves in the front to walk on, but then it can also stand up when needed. So I don't know how vertical this dinosaur would be most of the time. Looks like it would actually get around more on its back, just walking around on all fours, and then later it would stand maybe when it's feeding, you know, to try to get the food from the high leaves and such. All right, cool. So I think just looking at the anatomical reference, you know, it helps a lot. Even though if this character is kind of like a kitty character, always have reference when you're working. All right, let me see if I dynamesh this, and if I smooth it out, am I liking what I've got? What I like, then it gives him like a belly, and that's kind of cute. I'm gonna change the silhouette again, make these arms a bit wider, inflate those, move those in. All right, looking good. This is kind of the elbow of this character. Maybe even add like a bit of a shoulder flap, kind of like a deltoid. Dynamesh as I go, or just use, you know, Sculptris Pro here. Nifty feature there. Refine this. Even inflate on the inside a bit to give it plenty of room. Turn off symmetry here and then to make sure that it's working the way as intended. Do like a pinch around the center here. Kind of a clear two-half situation. So thinking about where the shoulder should be. If I raise the shoulder, he's kind of like a very different character than if he had lower shoulders. And lower shoulders, I think, are the way to go. Thinking again about mass production and, you know, actual physical prototyping of this character. These thumbs might get in the way a little bit with his head so close. That negative space isn't that much for anyone to work in mold. So they might need to slice and key this guy's head. We'll see. Not there yet. Thinking about it, but mostly just wanting to think about the appealing design. Thinking about like how skin would actually flow on this character. We do something like that. You know, he's got skin. It's not just straight anatomy of the muscles and skeleton. There's got to be some flow to it too. That doesn't look particularly cute. See, that's something I would do if I was making a, you know, a monster or like a giant creature for a realistic film. But sometimes it doesn't help when you're trying to make something cute. You've got to simplify. It's going to inflate. And let's just focus on thinking about the large shapes first. I like that he's very circular right there. See about changing the silhouette of the back a little bit. Give him a bit beefier neck. Goes well with the whole volette angle, if I do decide to go with that. Something weird happening here. I'm going to fix that. Going with my damn standard. And the brushes I'm using here are mostly just the dam standard, the clay, the regular standard, move, all with various smooths. Alright, that's looking better. I'm going to go ahead and save before I forget to save. And ZBrush crashes on me. Let's see, Iguano 2. All right, want to start refining the face and the eyes a bit as well, while we still have time in this stream. But I always find so many areas that I want to update. And just refine and improve so that it flows better from all angles, not getting caught up in just one. Also, I'm turning symmetry on and off as I need to. That helps with the nice pudginess of the legs. Maybe also do that same kind of little creasing for the forearm there. To help really define the shape. Smooth that out. So oftentimes what I do is I'll add detail and then remove it. It's part of my process. Also part of just seeing whether you like something. If you want to see whether you like something, just do it. Then you'll see whether you like it or not. It's my pro-life tips. Alright, I like what's going on here. Maybe just inflate a bit, all of it. Turn off Sculptris Pro as you need to, because I don't want to affect the topology so much as I do this part. Now this character has a combination of kind of hands and hooves. So I got to figure out how that's going to look. Yeah, once I'm done refining the shape, I guess. One thing at a time. Because when you look at the model from like a weird angle like this, I mean, you probably never look at the toy from this angle. But looking at the model from this angle helps you find things that you didn't even know were there. I can see just looking from the front, this plane is looking very flat, so I'm just going to round that out. Move that back, round that out. Let's see, does this character have straight hands or does it have an extra bendable appendage? So it's got its at least one. Let's see if maybe one would work. Maybe, we'll see. This might be cute, adding like a little extra bit of flap. Don't want to make the character seem obese either, but I do want it to feel round and approachable. So sometimes I'll overdo the wrinkles, and then again, like I said, tone down the detail. Kids always have like a lot of extra like fat here, like seen like baby legs do this kind of thing where they're kind of caving in on themselves. Do that on the outside too, see if it looks good. It does add to the appeal of him. Make him feel more like, you know, the Michelin Man. Let's see if I want to run that all the way through or not. No, not all the way through. Just a hint at it basically though. Inflate again, inflate again. Inflate back here. Switching between inflate and damp standard to kind of figure out these wrinkles. I like hinting at it more than like straight up having the line. Don't want too many lines. All right, looking at the bottom of the feet, refining that shape a bit too. These toes are super print friendly. Refine the shape of this tail a bit better. Make it even more curved. Fit into the box well. It's nice. I may want the tail to be even more curved so it's not taking up extra space. Like this is probably as far as the tail should go. So thinking about it in those terms, I should lose about that much of the tail to rotate it in so that it's not taking up any extra room than it needs. Save that. See if you guys have any other questions. ZBrushLIVE saying, oh my god, he can't poop, no hole. That's a good point. Let me give him a poop hole. Let's see, like right there, right? That would be his poop hole. I will take that under advisement, Lax. Thank you. Let's see. Inflate the legs back here a bit, like he's got a butt. Probably get rid of this now because don't feel like it's helping. I can smooth out the details there, so it'll look like it's there, but not actually have a line. I want to do the same thing I did to the legs, to the arms, in that chubby, wrinkly babiness. This is kind of like the step 2 of the model refinement. Adding in some neck wrinkles and clearly distinguish this character from the others. Don't want too much wrinkle detail, but then again, you don't want any detail at all. I mean, you don't want to have like too little detail. And I changed the pose up significantly. A lot of the details gets lost, so you have to kind of add it back on. I'm using the damn standard tool, negative as well, while holding Alt in order to kind of pull out a crease. So for example, if I just draw it flat like this, the damp standard tool will go in. When I hold Alt, it'll kind of bring it up. And then you can use a combination. So you can do that, and then on top of it, and then inflate maybe just the one end. And it creates a very different look, or inflate the back end. Creates a very different look than just doing damp standard, you know? I should make a shortcut for damp standard. I use it enough. I think I had D set up my as my damp standard shortcut, but then something happened. Probably ZBrush didn't like that because it needed D for its own purposes. Making the cheeks a bit bigger, turning off symmetry to do that. You can sometimes ruin your asymmetrical model with symmetry sometimes. Giving some puffy cheeks right there. If I want this character to smile, got to take that all the way up to the eyes. Whoa. It's a bit too much. Overdid it there. Bring that back in. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, guys. There's no like right or wrong way to sculpt this kind of stuff. I've heard a lot of artists say, well, be as low res as you can possibly be until you're happy with that, and then move up. And I've given that same advice many times myself. Work as low res as you can. But sometimes it's okay to, you know, go up high res and try to find the character, and then come back down and figure out your topology and the right way to do something. Let's see, go into my clay brush, kind of bring that out a bit as well. Bringing that up, cheek. Bringing up the tongue again. Clay is really good for this kind of thing. The clay brush. You can really set how you want the shape to be really quickly. Then get under there and then see it from a different angle to fix it. Use damp standard there as well. Kind of cut a little bit of a under. There we go. All right, pretty good. Let's see, almost 10 o'clock. Time to start wrapping this guy up. Not bad, with the tongue kind of sticking out like that. Cheeks are way too round and bubbly right now. Better than not having cheeks. I think what I need to do is actually bring in some good eyes and then get going on that. Work around the topology of good eyes. Stepping back, looking at the whole thing again. Kind of like that it's just going bigger as it goes down, so I'm kind of losing a bit of the roundness on purpose. May actually make these feet a bit larger as well. So you can see the process is not really straightforward and clean. It's a process of going through it bit by bit by bit. And then finding what you want from the character. All right, turn off symmetry when you do that kind of thing. There we go. Now this is kind of in line with the head, and so it's not taking up any extra room. Now that we did that, I can refine it a bit as well. Got to make sure you can fit it in the box. All right, it's looking much nicer. Let's see, we could do a little tail wrinkle as well. I found those to be relatively cute. See, add a few and maybe just the one, maybe two. But a wrinkle has to start somewhere, so there has to be one point that's really crinkly, and actually makes a lot more sense for that point to be here, because this is the point that's folding over on itself. So that makes a lot more sense than it being on the other end. When you're making wrinkles, you got to think about what's causing the wrinkle. It's the compression and the flex, so it's got to be on this side where it's being compressed. Might even do one here. And of course, come back to it and see if I still like it next week. We pinch this stuff. There we go. Move that up a bit. Okay. And then try to get rid of it too. Smooth it into the mesh. I move that in as well. Pinch there just to see if it works better. I'm going to pinch up at the top too. Don't want it changing the silhouette so much. All right. So we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm stoked with the wrinkles there. But next time what I want to do is really push this character to almost completion. So much happier with the pose now. Much happier with the balance and the engineering of it. It's gotten much rounder. I figured out kind of which mushroom I want to try making this for. Might actually even go in with an alpha and kind of sculpt in some of this detail here. Because this mushroom doesn't have gills, it's got that foamy thing going on. So bring in some texture into it. So making it small, looking at it at the scale that it'll actually be, looking at it from all sides. And eventually we'll get it to where we want. Symmetry on, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, I could keep noodling forever, but I think that's looking pretty close. I'll definitely need to work on the eyes. But aside from that, it's getting there. slowly but surely. Might even update the mouth a little bit so it's got a little bit of duck-billed dinosaur thing going on. All right, so we'll continue that next week. Thank you all for joining me for the stream. Hope you guys enjoyed it and found it informative. Let's see, people heading out. All right, perfect. Okay, so stay tuned for maybe I think in an hour Shane Olson starting his, and he's a really excellent artist as well. So take a look, and thanks for joining me. See you guys next week, same time, Monday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in Pacific Standard Time. And Aiman signing out now. Laters.